Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. I'm your host, Ross Stockdale, fractional CMO and owner of Thunderstock Marketing. And my special guest today is David Worrell from FuseCFO.
Great to be
David,
here. Thanks, Ross.
thanks for having me on, man, or thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Um, David, you're in Asheville, North Carolina, view in Charlotte. How is how is life and business going on? And are most of your clients local to you, or are you kind of wider geographical radius?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. First of all, Asheville is healing. Let's call it healing. We're anxious for tourists to come back. So anybody watching who wants to come back to Asheville, the water is fine. Jump on in. We'd love to have you. There are still spots where it's very sad, and you can go down to the river and see some amazing destruction and appreciate what Mother Nature can do to what man makes. But in general, we're happy to have tourists back and looking forward to a fun summer. So come to Asheville. And your second question was like, where are my clients? Well, so I moved here just recently because of the storm. I came
Mm,
to fix up some property, but I lived in Charlotte, started the business in Charlotte. And as you might expect, 15 years ago when I started the business, it was built around my personal relationships. And so there was a predominance of our clients were in the Charlotte region. But I'll tell you what, something really interesting happened during COVID and lockdown. We went from having a 10,000 square foot office full of accountants to working remotely, like a lot of people, right? And when we started working remotely, not only did we find that we had the freedom to hire employees from outside of Charlotte, which was a huge help, but
mm.
we had the freedom to take, we polished up our remote work capabilities. And so we had the freedom to take on remote customers. And as a result, today, I have customers all over the world. I have some in Spain and England, the Bahamas, South America, and all over the United States. So it's still kind of focused on the Charlotte and the Carolinas region, but it's been really exciting to make that change to remote, where you can now serve the whole world, and we're enjoying that.
Man, I love hearing stories of people that take the challenge of COVID and how disruptive it is, and you know basically use it as a launching pad to really exponentially grow the reach of their business. So it sounds like you've
Yeah.
done just that. Now, it probably wasn't always that way. You said you started 15 years ago. How did you get started, and what was it like taking that step into, starting Fuse CFO?
Yeah, well, I've always been an entrepreneur. I mean, even as a kid, I worked my way through college by mowing lawns and sealing driveways and selling snow cones off of my bicycle. So there's lots of entrepreneurial silly stories in my background. This is my fourth or fifth startup, and I was just at a place where I had sold my last business, and I sat down with a whiteboard and I said, "What do I like to do?
Mm.
What can I make money doing?" And what can I be successful doing? And so I whiteboarded that all out and sat and stared at it for a while, and decided that fractional CFO was a very sexy term at the time and seemed like something I could have a high bill rate at. And I had some friends. I'd been doing financial analysis, and I'd been the CFO role in my prior companies. So I had lots of friends in finance. We started with just four. I hope this isn't too non-PC, but four old white guys who thought we could be high billing CFOs. And we went out to our first clients and realized that we couldn't do CFO strategic work because our clients hadn't done the foundational
Mm.
accounting work, right?
Hmm.
We said, show us your balance sheet. And we'd get these deer in the headlight looks. And we'd say, well, if you can't make a usable set of financial statements, it's going to be really hard for us to help you grow your business from a numbers perspective. And so our first pivot was, hey, let's not show up as a group of old white guy CFOs. Let's bring accountants and controllers and bookkeepers and CPAs with us. And so now we are an outsourced finance department. And if you've got crap for books, we're here to help you clean up the mess. And when the mess is cleaned up, we're here to provide the strategy and the dashboarding and the KPIs and the management advice to go along with that.
So you said that you were a CFO in a prior role, and I have to stop and laugh and say, four old white guys. David, I would not have pegged you as an avatar of what I would consider an old white guy. Okay. I don't need to know your age on camera unless you want to share, but you could be anywhere between mid 30s to maybe high
Oh,
40s.
bless you.
So
I will turn
so
58 this spring. In a couple months, I'll be 58 and feel like I've been around the block. It must be the video touch up that's going on that Zoom's doing for me today.
we'll give it to Zoom or whatever you're doing with your anti-aging protocol. Feel free to share that. But I'm sure there's
Yeah.
plenty of other people out there that would benefit from anti-aging. But all things aside, so you've got 15 years with Fuse CFO. You had several other compadres. You started this in your mid 30s. Honestly, you said at the time fractional CFO was the sexy term. I think it's only gotten sexier. And honestly, the term fractional CFO, you might have been, as far as people that I know that are fractional CFOs, one of the only that started like 20, was it 2010 you launched?
12, yeah, somewhere around
12.
there. So yeah, you're right.
Kind of
We
ahead of
had
your
to
time
explain
in
what
that stance.
yeah, we had to explain what it meant at the time. But you know what they say about pioneers? Those are the guys who have the arrows in their back.
The
Because
bleeding edge.
yeah, exactly right. So for a while, it was not exactly a benefit for us to say we're fractional CFOs. People were like, "What?" And we'd say part-time CFOs, and they'd say, "Oh, well, okay, I get that."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Outsourced CFO, part-time.
yeah,
So,
outsourcing.
so what was the business that you sold in order to get to where you're at? What did that look like, and how did that experience prepare you to do this Fuse CFO?
Yeah, well, this is my fourth business that I've owned, and they've been in technology, they've been business to business services, and once before I was kind of a financial analyst for hire out in Silicon Valley. So during the boom days, the first dot-com boom and bust, I was out there raising venture capital and helping young dot-coms write their business plans and do financial forecasts and models. So yeah, I've always had that the financial perspective on the business. In the most recent one, my brother and I were in business together selling healthcare services for overseas clinical research organizations. That's way more than you needed to know, but he was the outside guy selling. I was the inside guy doing finance and operations. And so it gave me a good a good foundation for what's it take to run a business, what do the financial statements mean, how important is accounting, and I've always had this passion. First of all, I'm enjoying speaking with you because my first passion is truly marketing and communications.
Mm,
I wrote for Entrepreneur Magazine for a while just because I love words, right? But I also really like numbers. And what I see the problem is for most entrepreneurs is we start a business because we're good at doing something, right? The classic
yes.
example is the cake baker who starts a bakery because he likes to make cakes. And then suddenly he's got a lot of business, so he hires production people. That's number one. He hires somebody else to help him bake. And then he hires like sales and marketing to put a sign out in front of the store. And now he's got 4 or 5 employees, so he needs an HR function. And but he almost never quite gets around to developing a finance function in his business. And I just feel like a finance function can be so valuable to help an entrepreneur drive strategy and meaningful growth and consistent growth and really, make better decisions based on the numbers. And so that's where I found my real passion for helping people is to help them see deeper, more deeply into their business, what's going on, how do we quantify it, how do we measure it, how do we plot it out and make decisions from the actual results.
On the other side of that coin, I love that you're breaking the mold or the stigma of a finance person who's the painful introvert that just wants to sit behind an Excel spreadsheet and crunch numbers. You like
Yeah.
to tell a story with numbers. I think as a marketer, one of the things that I've identified early on in my career and a gap in the service that a lot of marketing salespeople do is a lot of the people that I know that got into marketing are more of the creative types, whether they like design or whether they like, they like storytelling or videography. And that's all great. Like those things are important and they're needed for creative and branding and feeling. But I really cut my teeth. You said you were in business with your brother.
Yeah.
My brother, I mentioned before, might go to Asheville with him this year,
Oh
but
yeah.
he is actually a mathematician at Clemson. And I have someone that is like the pure analyst, pure logic and reasoning. I grew up with him. We're close. We're best friends. I'll be the best man in his wedding. And I always love telling the story of numbers. So with marketing, it's great to say, oh, our brand, sentiment is increased by people like us more. But it's better when you have dashboards and KPIs and scorecards that say this is the return on not just your ad spend, but on your marketing initiative. And this is the percentage growth. So you can make meaningful insights. So how do you how do you fit in to organizations that may not have the basics done? And I'll give one short little anecdote. My first ever asset under management in private equity when I was doing CMO work for my family office was a business that was around for 53 years. And they had a 20-hour a week bookkeeper, and that was the only person they had in accounting and finance. That business was losing money. Big shocker. So when I'm sure you've understood and you talked about and worked with clients that are great at doing the thing, baking the cakes, but maybe not, counting the ins and outs. So
Right.
how do you approach the business that are at the very floor and just they don't even know, they're not even
Yeah.
problem aware that they have the problem with accounting and finance?
Yeah. I bump into a lot of people who just will always manage their business by looking at their bank account. I've got
Mm,
money in the bank, so I must be doing fine. And if you don't value the knowledge that can come from a deeper understanding of your finances, that may be all you're ever going to do is just run a lifestyle business out of your bank account. And I'm not
sure.
sure that we can really help those people. But
Mm,
when you see that spark, when somebody goes, "Oh my God, I've got $1 million a year business, right? I'm making $100,000 a month. Where's all my money going? How come I'm not eating caviar and drinking champagne every night, you know?" Something happens in their life where they go, ding, I need to professionalize my financial life inside my business. And for those people, we've got a very clear path. I call it the circle of life or the donut, whatever you want to call it.
hmm
But it starts with clear accounting. You got to know what your numbers are, or you can't chart your course forward, right? So clean up the accounting, clean up the mess, know what your numbers are. Look at things like your capital structure. Are you just drowning in debt and paying too much in interest? And if so, maybe there's some help we can give you to restructure the financial foundation. So accounting, capitalization, and we go around the wheel all the way to things like how do we automate with more software and streamline
hmm
your operations? And does everybody know what we're really trying to accomplish here? But along the way, we look at all kinds of interesting things that are more number oriented, like your pricing. If you don't know your cost of goods sold, you'll never know what the right price is to charge for your product, right? For you and me, Ross, the cost of goods sold is probably the number of man hours we put into a project. And if you've got employees that you're paying $50 an hour and they put
Right.
in 50 hours, you got to know that you just spent $2,500 to service that account, and your price better be higher than that. But if you're not capturing your cost of goods sold or your labor that goes into your services, man, your price could be anywhere and you could be losing money every time. And as they say, you can't lose money every time and make it up on volume. You
Then
can't
you're
just
just
do more
losing
of the
money
same.
faster.
That's right. You can't just do more of the same.
If you're finding yourself in a hole, for step one is quit digging the hole.
That's right. Stop digging. Yeah.
So something else that you said earlier that made me really think about this is you said a lot of times with the cake business as an example, they'll hire another production employee and they'll focus on operations. And I found that if I had to oversimplify a business org chart, you have in the middle your operations. So doing the thing that you're in the business of doing, providing the service. And on the other side, you have getting people to provide the service for. So your sales, your marketing, your business development. On the back end, you have the finance and accounting, which is making sure that the money is being tracked, bills are getting paid, and we're making money in the right direction. I find that some of the best operators and decision makers for being in charge of operations may have been CFOs or they may have accounting. So it's almost like yes, that's easy when you have production level employees, but when you're making decisions, if you don't at least have that understanding of finance and accounting, it's really hard to lead organizations. So when you said as one of the examples of clients, someone that's a million a year minimum, do you have a ideal range of clients that it's a sweet spot you like to help? Is it, starting at a million all the way up to a certain number?
Sure. And, we actually have clients who are pre-revenue or really early stage, 5 figures of income. But the thing that's common about them is that they are entrepreneurial. They're not dog walkers and ice cream shops who are just looking to have a lifestyle business. They're trying to grow something over time. And so what we find is, we can add value at the very early stages. We'll keep it light. We'll keep it inexpensive. When you hit about somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year revenue, you need not a full-time person. You need a partner to do real bookkeeping and real accounting for you. By the time you're hitting $5 to $10 million, you need multiple roles within that department. You need an accountant, a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a CFO to start, really pulling actionable information out of your finances and helping you make decisions. So our clients go anywhere from, I won't say zero. We don't have a lot of zeros, but we do help startups. The core business is $1 million revenue to maybe 25 or $50 million in revenue. And
Hmm.
then somewhere in the 25 to 50, you've probably got your own staff. And unless I can help you because somebody's on maternity leave, you're probably not going to call me. I mean, we might sub in, but we're not a full-time resource for you.
I can completely relate and understand that sort of bell curve of client
Yeah.
service. I'll also work, just to share a bit about mine. It's like if you're in that startup phase, or I really like your entrepreneurial idea. I think there's a lot of merit to it. From 0 to 1 million, I'll help you. You'll be at my smallest level of service. From 1 to 10, it's a great sweet spot for me. I'll do some CMO advisory. From
Yeah.
10 to about 20, or whether it's 10 to 20, depending on the industry, it could be 5 to 20. I'll do your engaged CMO. And then from organizations that are 20 and up, it's a higher level of CMO. But once you get to like 50, for me, you probably need your full-time person in-house.
Right.
That's the growth stage. So it sounds like
Right.
you've seen the same trends in the last 15 years. Gives me a lot of confidence that I have the right milestone markers for how I help people. But let me ask you, what are some of the common problems that you solve, or issues or challenges that you see at some of these stages of growth that these entrepreneurs have?
Well, number one, the most common, the common thread that ties everybody together is just a lack of understanding their own financial statements. So we like to say that we are teachers disguised as accountants, right? We're going to teach you to not just, we're not going to just hand you your reconciled P&L at the end of the month and say, okay, we balanced your bank account. Here's your income statement. Thanks a lot. See you next month. That's not us, right? We're going to teach you what is a P&L, what is a balance sheet, how do you look at these key metrics and make decisions off them. So understanding your financial results is the first growth strategy. And then I think it's pricing right. It's understanding your break even.
Hmm.
So lots of people go through life and never know whether they're going to make money next month or not because they don't know what their break even is. And that's a really super simple thing to calculate. By the way, that is overhead divided by gross margin percentage equals your break even sales number. So if you know your overhead, your rent, utilities, and you know your pricing and your gross margin percentage, you can figure out your break even any day you want. Um, so yeah, it's the basic stepping stones where to get there, and then I think it comes down to cash flow. How do you do the block and tackling of collecting more quickly and paying more slowly? And just as
Hmm.
an example, I didn't take my own advice for a while. There was a year, several years ago, where I let a couple of big customers string me out. They weren't paying their bills, and then they quit, and they stuck me with over $125,000 worth of bad debt, accounts receivable, right?
Hmm.
I'd done the work. I'd paid my employees. I sent them a bill. They sat on it. We kept doing more work. And then they said, screw you, we're out of here. And we're not going to pay your bills either. And they left me $125,000 in debt. And for $1 million business at the time, that was, man, that was
Over
two,
10%.
yeah, man, that was more than a month's worth of total income for me to write off. That was very painful. And so I learned the lesson. I said, you know what? If people don't value my effort, I'm not going to work for them, number one. And if they do value my effort, I'm going to get paid within 10 days by setting up an automatic ACH withdrawal. So
Mm.
now you work with me, you sign a contract, and part of that contract is your bank account number and your signature so that I send you a bill on the first and I pay my own bill on the 10th by drawing an ACH and I get paid. And it's amazing that, you know what? Nobody ever complains about that. And you would
Hmm.
think, oh my God, I can't do something like that. My customers will run screaming and they'll think I'm whatever. They're going to be afraid to work with me. But they don't. In fact, it's the opposite happens, as a marketer can appreciate. It garners respect, right? You have such a buttoned down system that you send me the bill on the first of the month and you take my money on the 10th of the month and there's never a problem.
Hey, prior planning prevents lots of bad results. I'm not
That's
going to
right.
finish the rest of the six P's, that phrase, but
Yeah.
I really do respect when people have learned lessons the hard way and they've corrected their behavior. So, what are some of the 2 to 3 milestones or achievements in your career that have really shaped the journey and how you've gotten here now?
Boy.
Other than that accounts receivable thing, that was a pretty cool one, but there might have
Well,
been
that was
some
a big
bigger
one because,
picture.
yeah, that was a big one because you got to get paid. If you don't get paid, you're just doing volunteer work, right?
Hmm.
So, um, I think imposter syndrome has played a big role in my career, and we all feel less than other people who look more successful and who have more money than us. And so we tend to undervalue our time. And so it took me a long time to get to the position where I would say, I'm worth $250 an hour. My accountants are worth $150 an hour. That's our price. We do really good work for that price. And if that's not your market, you're not looking to pay 150, you're not my customer.
Hmm.
As a younger entrepreneur, I used to just grovel for work. I would take anything you threw at me. And if you wanted to pay me 25 bucks an hour, I'd slog through it with the hope that we became really good friends and you loved my work and you'd pay me more next time. You can't make a living doing that, man. You cannot go through life negotiating with yourself. We used to call it head trash, you know.
Mm.
I say, I ought to be worth 150, but this customer, he probably only wants to pay 75. And boy, they had a hard month, so I'll give them a discount to, $25 an hour. And that's negotiating with yourself. You can't do that. So when I stopped negotiating with myself, I stopped letting the customers string me out. Uh, and then I stopped trying to do everything myself. And that
Mm.
meant really learning how to delegate and set up a leadership team. And are you familiar, Ross, with the concept of having an operating system in your business, maybe like EOS or
Well,
Gazelles?
well, EOS, that was my first foray in leadership. So when I was in my mid 20s, I worked my way up the corporate ladder to marketing agency, and the average age of people, the 12 people that I, was responsible for leading, was double my age.
Yeah,
And I was so grateful at that period where the founder and CEO started doing EOS with an implementer. Now, EOS is part of my ideal client profile. That's one of the ways that I bring into organizations, whether they already use it, which is even better. But if they don't, this is how I structure my management. A
yeah,
1,000,000% big fan
yeah.
of EOS.
I think I see traction on your bookshelf back there, actually, the big orange traction book, maybe.
I
I don't
I think I have 3 copies throughout my house, so you probably
know.
do.
Excellent. Well, EOS changed my life. I don't like to overhype it too much because it's 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 not all that in a bag of chips, but it is a foundational understanding of how to delegate, how to run a meeting, and and it forced me to name a leadership team in my group. I'd been, what do they call it? The charismatic leader with 1,000 followers.
Visionary.
Well, yeah, but before you implement, yeah, if you're just a visionary trying to run a company, you're just a charismatic leader trying to do everything, right?
Hmm.
And I went from being that charismatic, but I'm going to do everything kind of leader to being okay, let's have a leadership team. Jessica, Angie, Jan, I want to see you guys for an hour and a half every Thursday afternoon, and we're going to go through the same agenda every Thursday afternoon, and we're going to measure these KPIs every Thursday afternoon. And that, my friend, is life changing when as a manager, you can step back and say, holy crap, I really do have some great people on my team who are mature enough to make good decisions and run the business without me looking over their shoulder all the time, without me doing everything that's in the business. So, truthfully, for the last 2 to 5 years, my role at the company has been sales and marketing. That's about it. I
Yeah.
don't do accounting for most. I have a couple of fun clients that I love, but most of the time I'm not doing accounting or finance work. I'm doing sales and marketing, business development.
One lesson I learned the hard way, David, was in the very beginning when I started being a fractional CMO. It's always interesting when I've been a part of other organizations, is because I had a bit more of an outside perspective. I wasn't as closely emotionally attached. But when I started my own, this time around, I would say yes to discounts, or and I really liked the person. I really wanted to be my client, so I discount my rate. And what I always found versus the clients that I landed because of discount is they always then undervalue, underappreciate the services and my time, and they just wanted more of a discount. There was never a satisfactory. But when the clients and I was like pretty firm and where I was at, that was like, hey, this is the price. And they're like, okay, sounds good. I never had those issues. So far, that is an incredibly poignant truth
Yeah.
that I wish anyone listening who runs a business could, do some self-reflection and see if that rings true in their business as well. And it's such an interesting thing that one of the key stages of growth for you is implementing an operating system, whether it's EOS or something else. I think of it like going from 0 to 1 is such a more important step than going from 1 to 10, because once you have an established baseline, you have a system and protocol, then it's all about improving it and refining it. But if you don't have one, sort of like with your balance sheet, you need to have something in place in order to improve it and optimize it. So great response and insight. Um, Another question I have for you is a bit less tactical. You've had four businesses you started. You've been a part of some pretty interesting time periods with Silicon Valley and the dot-com bubble. And you've also had family business. You said you were in business with your brother.
Right.
Wide range of experience. What would you tell yourself when you were 8 years old, if you could go back in time? Not to change anything, not a regret,
Yeah.
but like what words of wisdom would you say you've gained so far that you could tell, your younger self? And on the other side of that coin is, what would you hope to have a conversation with your end of the day self, whether that's 80 or 100, depending on at your rate, you might live to 120, David. So what is what would you want to
That
say at
is
the
the
end of the
plan, by
day?
the way. That's the plan.
There you go.
Oh gosh, Ross. I think the those kinds of philosophical exercises are fun. I wouldn't want to change too much about the experience, but I might emphasize to a younger me that uh, that it will be very exciting, and that you should be more excited for it. That
Mm.
taking action is really always the next step. Just keep taking action, just keep doing it, and get up every day and have fun and enjoy the ride. Because even at the worst of times, everything changes, right? So I think when you asked me that on the intake form, I put just wait. And I think that's a really what's the Marcus Aurelius philosophy of stoicism, right? Stoics.
Sure.
Yeah, I would guess I would call myself more of a stoic. And one of the underpinnings of that is just wait and see. You don't know. You think you're in a bad spot now, but maybe it's a blessing. Like this storm. Really amazing little short story for you.
Sure.
We wanted to move from Charlotte to Asheville for the last 2 years. We've been trying to move here. We put an offer on a very expensive house. That the offer fell through at the last minute. The contract fell through. We signed a lease on a uh, rental home that we were going to move into, and then the storm hit and wiped out the property that we did have here, which is an investment property. And we had never considered living here because it's a business all unto itself, right? We didn't want to destroy the business by moving into it.
Hmm.
Anyway, turns out that we have to be here to do the kinds of repairs that we need to do. It's a damn good thing that contract on that $1 million house down the street fell through. Otherwise, I would have had two properties destroyed at this point, and I would be absolutely bankrupt. And it's a good thing that
Mm.
the storm hit when it did, because my rental lease for the rental home I was going to rent started 2 days later. And I would have been, again, had two homes and been bankrupt trying to pay both of them, even if one was just rent. But because of the storm, the lease was canceled because that house was damaged and didn't have utilities. Anyway, the long story is we thought losing that contract and losing that lease were bad news. Turns out in the end, it's all good news because we're right where we need to be. We're taking care of business. We didn't fall, things could have been much worse if we'd had everything we wanted 6 months ago. So just wait and see. Things that seem bad are going to be good. Things that seem great, maybe, maybe you'll learn that they weren't so great. So
Same thing happened with COVID. Global pandemic could be awful. It's very disruptive. It helped you to go international and hire remote challenges. I think, not to spoil anything, but I might put the title of this "Every Storm a Silver Lining." Um, it's such a You talked about stoicism. One of the core values I have for my organization. I'm a big core values believer. Also, was a philosophy major in college. Also, my grandfather's cousin was a Stoic philosophy professor, James
hey,
Stockdale.
wow,
And the main reason I bring that up is to retain faith while confronting reality. And I think that that mentality from a philosophical standpoint has been more useful and helpful in going forward, right? Taking the
yeah,
next step. It's just the next
yeah,
step.
yeah,
Journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and then the
right,
next one, and then the next one.
yeah.
So, man, that was such a powerful lesson, David. I love hearing your perspective. Um, and when you're 120, 130 years old, I'm sure you'll have even more valuable nuggets in there. The last question, and maybe the most important question, David, is where can people reach out to you and get in contact with you to learn more about? I understand you've written a book, so if you want to share with that title and where to get it,
Yeah.
yeah, just this is use this time to plug away.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, FuseCFO.com is our home on the web. You can find a link to a page about my book there. So, the book is called The Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Statements. Sounds horribly boring. I promise you, it's actually not. I wrote this book about stories about other entrepreneurs and how they use financial tools to solve real world business problems. Most of the entrepreneurs were very small businesses. I gave them all names. I told you exactly what's going on in their business and how they solved it. It's broken into three sections. So you got the stories, you got a little bit of detail, what is, how to read a financial statement, what is a balance sheet. And then the last 50 pages are a glossary and index where you can really just grab it, leave it on your desk, grab it and look up what is gross margin percentage. How do I calculate break even, right? Can be a great reference book for you in that regard. So I hope some easy learning. It's finance for non-finance people. You can find me online, you can find the book on Amazon, and you are welcome to call me at any time. I'd love to talk to anybody. I am David at FuseCFO.com. So hope to hope to make some new friends.
Well, David, thanks so much for coming on today. Everyone listening, I hope that you found this to be meeting your expectation of a valuable brainstorm to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. I know I sure did. I don't run ads on the show. The only request that I ever have is if you found this interesting, share it with a friend. That's how the show grows. Um, the only other request that I have for you is just to carry forth, do your thing, and be well. Thanks so much. That's Thunderstock Show. That's it for today. Until next time.